Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to Drawing Down the Stars. I'm Snappy. Thank you for joining me, and I'm joined as always by my good friend and co-host, Graham. How's it going, Graham?
Great. Very excited for tonight.
This is going to be so much fun. So we're back with Searching for Dragons, which is the show where we look for artists who really explore life from that magical perspective. And today we're going back to one of the first artists we ever talked about, Hilda Doolittle, better known as HD. So this will be fun. You were telling me you don't remember too much about that episode. It was a while ago, and you've been unwell. But
Yeah, a procedure I had sort of affected my memory, but I do know a little. I remember a little bit better.
right, this is going to be so much fun. So let's give a bit of a rehash of just who HD is, so people kind of have this understanding. So HD is one of the most important American poets of the modern age. Right, she's really coming about. I believe. What's her? Let me just double check her birth date here.
1806.
Thank you. Right. And then she's dying in 1961. And so she's really living through that whole war period and really writing on that war period. And it's her story is just so absolutely incredible. You know, she's a young girl growing up in the southern United States, learns the Greek language. She meets up at a very young age with another really famous poet, Ezra Pound, and they have a very sort of muse kind of relationship where at first Ezra really sees HD as his muse. They become lovers. He decides to give her a nom de plume, a name called HD. And he really loved her poetry and decided to call it Imagiste with the E on the end. And together, as well as with a few other American poets and some British, they founded the Imagist movement, which was this movement of creating poetry that was extraordinarily simple and really focused on the emotion and on the imagistic quality of the words, right? At this time, you got to remember they're coming out of that romantic period, you know, and romanticism had dominated the landscape of poetry for almost 100 years at this point. So, and at that point, it was all about being verbose and being, you know, showing off your English literary skill. And a lot of these poets at this time felt that that was flowery nonsense, and it took away from the essence of what they were trying to get at, you know. What's interesting too with HD though is that her story takes wild turns, right? She goes to the UK to chase, in some ways, Ezra, but they wind up having a falling out. And as we know, Ezra becomes an extremist. He winds up moving to Italy, becomes a fascist. They have a total falling out. She winds up falling in love and in going into a relationship with a non-binary person. I mean, that's a term we would use today. They identified as a woman, but I guess we'd say they were a butch lesbian. Their name was Briar. They didn't use any pronouns, but I imagine today Briar would have identified as non-binary, right? So HD and Briar became lovers, and they created a bunch of movies, a lot of poetry. Eventually, Briar was extremely rich. She came from like a very wealthy British aristocratic family. And eventually they moved to Switzerland and they bought a mansion in Switzerland. And at this point, things get truly wild because two major things happen for HD. One, she becomes a student and a a patient of the late, great Freud. And she was a contemporary of Carl Jung, who she did not like at all. She thought that Jung was kind of a stealing from the master and also stealing from the classics, according to her. But from her writings, Freud gave her the tools necessary to create her own mythopoetic framework and to deal with the horrors and tragedies of her life, especially the horrors and tragedies of these two world wars, and seeing her lover and her muse, you know, her best friend, Ezra Pound, turned fascist, right? This was all incredibly shocking and hard for her. And also being a bisexual woman at this time, right? Incredibly wild, you know? So what ends up happening with her is that her and Briar during World War II, they actually become major players within the Underground Railroad, and they help to rescue a lot of Jewish refugees and other refugees out of Germany and into Switzerland, and then help them get into various ways to the UK and to other places of safe haven. So just really powerful person. But at this point in her life, when we're coming up to this work, Hermetic Definition, right, which is her last final work. This is HD in the last time of her life. It gets published in 1960, 1 year before her death, right? And it's really the culmination of all of her work and all of her life experiences. At this time, she's still kind of in a relationship with Breyer, but they're somewhat estranged. They're more like friends and lovers, more friends than lovers, but they're still, in a relationship. She has gone way into the magic at this point. She has really pursued that muse and has allowed it to dictate her entire life, to the point where it's kind of alienated her from a lot of her friends and whatnot. She's now living in France. And she's also, one of the interesting things too, she's speaking 3 different languages fluently all the time. So we'll see in this work, French, German, and English kind of all come in. More so French than German, I believe, but there's a little bit. But point is, at this point in her life, she's really trying to struggle and try to bring this whole story of her life into order. So first I want to talk about this idea of the Hermetic definition itself and HD, okay? So this is a huge point of contention with HD, is that trying to struggle with this identity as the poet and as the artist, right? HD was a name that was given to her, right? She didn't choose that name. She was amused to someone else and that was inspired. So she's always kind of struggled for her own self-definition. And a huge part of her life as a poet was breaking free from the shadow of Ezra Pound, right? And establishing herself as her own poet in her own right and not as his muse. And so part of that is defining HD. And this is what she does in this poem. She creates the Hermetic definition. And what she means by this, in that sense of Hermetic, it's in many different ways. In one way, it's the final definition of her life, right? She's gone through many cycles, many characters, and this is her last version, HD realized, sealed and contained fully. The other version to see this through is this lens of the Hermetic in going into a hermitage, going out onto the own and self-discovery and self-definition. So this is her redefining herself in her own image, no longer through the lens of Ezra Pound, no longer his muse or anyone else's, no longer Breyer's muse. This is HD for HD. All right. So,
not really surprising then that the Hermetic definition is the same initials as HD, right?
Exactly, right? That's where it comes from. This is all about her trying to really understand what it means to be a poet artist and what HD is, right? Because herself as an individual is distinct from herself as an artist, right? These are 2 characters in her life in some ways. And also this poem is about bridging that and becoming whole, right? Becoming that totality of being defined by the self and through the self, reclaiming her image entirely for herself, So we're now going to get into, I wanted to start with a bit from the foreword so we can understand what's going on. And what she says here, it says, so the foreword was written by a good friend of hers, Norman Pearson, I believe. And he's going to show us the various influences and talk a bit about the work. So he said, what had been chiefly Greek metaphor became increasingly myth, joined by Egyptian parallels and memories of the Moravian background of her childhood. The spirit caught back into the old mysteries of Egypt and Greece, she wrote. So what we're seeing here is that at this point in her life, we're seeing a total refinement. She's interested in this creation of myth in and of itself, right? Another previous work of hers that was kind of her most intense up until this point would have been Helen in Egypt, where in some ways she even regards this as a profaning of the mystery because she's transforming the story. She's going to alternative texts and rewriting it. But she's also recognizing that with a lot of these tales, there were multiple variations of the story before it became refined. And so with Helen of Egypt, she was trying to redefine that image through going back to its roots and through alternative sources. And so now we're seeing this even more refined, where now she's creating a myth wholesale out of her own experience, and a myth entirely derived of herself, but rooted in these three great mythologies that form the background of her life, which is Moravian Christianity, which is like an esoteric form of Christianity, Egyptian mythology, and Greek mythology. Okay. So, and this is where she's going to talk a bit about Freud. It says, Freud was a significant tutor. As E.B. Butler, a friend, wrote in answer to a letter from her, I entirely agree about him, a great mythologist to whom we all owe an incalculable debt on the poetic side. As H.D. herself wrote elsewhere, without the analysis and the illuminating doctrine or philosophy of Sigmund Freud, I would hardly have been found the clue or the bridge between the child life, the memories of peaceful Bethlehem. She grew up in Bethlehem in the U.S. I can't remember what state.
Pennsylvania.
And the orgy of destruction later witnessed and lived through in London when she moved to London during World War I. That outer threat and constant reminder of death drove me inward. The war was both tutor and goad. With it, she began a new period of creativity.
Beautiful.
And so this is explaining what the Hermetic definition sort of is about. It says, this sense of ancient wisdom is what Hermetic definition is. Isis takes many forms, as does Osiris, says HD, and her core myth, certain that women are individually seeking as one woman fragments of the eternal lover. As the eternal lover has been scattered or disassociated, so she in search for him. And Bid Me to Live, a madrigal, which is another collection, she seeks for him in contemporary time. She seeks him in fantasy myth, so she puts it. The eternal lover. But she identifies the eternal lover with Osiris and Dionysus, right? The child of Isis, the great mother. And this cycle of giving birth to your lover. This is essential to understanding what's going on with HD. So to really explain this poem, because there's so much going on and there's so many layers, I wanted to go through this really short essay I found that was just brilliant. It's not really from a magical perspective, so we'll add in some more magical perspective, but it really shows you variations of influences and ideas that are coming through the text. Okay, so this was written by Vincent Quinn, and it was for the University of Wisconsin and the Journal of Contemporary Literature. All right, so it says, Hermetic definition is an important revelation of HD's understanding of the life of a poet. At the start of her career in 1913, by the act of adopting the pen name HD, she had separated her identity as Hilda Doolittle from her role as poet. In this poem, written almost 50 years later, she offered a Hermetic definition of what that separation had meant. The poem consists of 3 parts: Red Rose and a Beggar, Grove of Academy, and Star of Day. And each part has a pair of dates appended to its title. By including these dates, HD calls attention to the importance of time in the poem. Her real subject, in fact, is the relationship between the timeless state in which completed poems exist and particular moments in the life of the poet, especially those involved in the writing of poetry. This is going to make sense in a second, but it's really this idea of like giving birth to something and something living, immortalized in art, right? Throughout Hermetic definition, a young man HD had only met twice is present as both human being and symbol, In the first part, his symbolic role predominates, and in Grove of Academy, his reality is stressed. In addition to their ages, HD gives several other personal details. His remark, "You look well," when last they met in a strange place with others there. His promise to write her, their exchange of letters, her fear that her Notre Dame revelation may have seemed bizarre to him, his failure to write again, and her conclusion that apparently it was over. So on one hand, we have this very real relationship that exists in the physical world over time. And what's interesting is when we look at the times that she writes her poems, there's a 9-month gestation period as she gives birth to this man. And he dies in the real world too. So as he dies, she completes the poem and gives birth to him renewed. How wild, right? In this sad, resigned state of mind, she has been reading Persée, whose perception of vast cycles of time and nature appeals to her as an alternative to the anxieties of personal relationship. His detachment is welcomed as the exact emotional opposite. Your cool laurel, the olive silver green, to compensate or offset the reddest rose, this enigmatic encounter. Yet she cannot accept this impersonal alternative. Persée has transcended human emotion, so far that even her plea to him for pardon for her deflection would go unheard. She sees his detachment as part of his greatness, but she cannot share in it. Her place is with ordinary humanity, fearful and pious, hoping against hope that wishes may be fulfilled. So experiencing this idealistic man, she's almost able to realize her idealistic lover, someone who's fully removed, fully God in every sense. It's kind of interesting. Part 3, Star of Day, brings the poem to its climax with the announcement that the young man has died in the winter, in the depths of night, just as my Christmas candles had burnt out. Her reaction provides the key to the deepest meaning of the poem. The significant fact is that she expresses no grief at all. The physical reality of the young man, which has hung in unsteady balance with his symbolic role, now almost completely vanishes. Instead of lamenting the death of a man, HD at once absorbs herself in the supportive implications of the myth of the Egyptian goddess Sais. So Sais is a city in Egypt and is related to Isis and to the goddess Neith, which is a creation goddess. It's Isis by another name, who she associates with Isis and Notre Dame. The childbearing archetypes she has invoked throughout this poem. HD introduces her at this point because they say, Sais brought forth the star of day at midnight when the shadows are most dense, the light's longest and most desperate. Patterning her situation upon this myth, HD transforms the death of the young man at the winter solstice and Christmas tide into a birth by which he has been integrated with the star of day, which is Venus by another name, the great mother again, right? Beautiful. Looking back upon her relationship with him, she sees in it a sequence that is now complete. The first meeting took place in April. They met once more in May, and he has died in December. From their first meeting to his death, 9 months elapsed. This detail supports her intuition that she has given birth to a spiritual child and what appears to be the death of a man. Right? And this is a theme we'll see in all of the Greek and Egyptian mythology. Death is a rebirth into new life, an apotheosis, right? Like Sais, Isis, and Notre Dame, which is the mother of God, right? Mary. She has played the role of mother. As a consequence of their 9-month relationship, HD has written a poem resurrecting the young man in art. He now has a life in poetry. The stages of this childbearing are charted in detail. HD says that when in August she became aware of her condition, you were 5 months on the way. It is now clear that the statement, the reddest rose unfolds, which is repeated throughout part 1, refers to the swelling caused by the growth of the poem within her, the birth of this new man. She now understands part 2, Grove of Academy, in the context of her pregnancy, meaning Persée had strengthened her commitment to art. Momentarily, as we have seen, she was attracted to his poetic world of transhumance, his Ile de Promesse, islands of promise. But she had recognized the error of following a way, not mine, but another's. Again, right? A big idea of this poem, like I was saying at the beginning, is self-creation. Why I wanted to show the three different things, because we see there's so many levels to this poem. Because when I read it, clearly all about the first time I read it, clearly all about self creation. And then I read it again and I noticed the birthing, more of the birthing stuff, the time in the 9 months and all of this creation of mythology and giving birth to that idealized eternal lover. But then you also see this creation of the poet, the realization of the poet. There's so many levels, right? The process of transforming light into art is then the Hermetic definition of the artist. The metamorphosis of Hilda Doolittle into the poet HD is paralleled by the metamorphosis of the events in HD's life into the material of art. By giving birth to this man, she gives birth to herself. The creation of this work is her realization of that motherhood. She has now become the divine mother, embodied in actuality. Essentially, the poem is not about the young man, regardless of his physical reality. His main function here is to be a figure of speech for the process of writing a poem. HD has succeeded in using the apparent subject of her poem to represent the stages she went through in writing it. The young man's first appearance germinates the creative impulse, the mysterious conception of a poem within the poet. The completion of the poem is the poet's delivery of her child, noted explicitly by HD as occurring 9 months after they met. Ironically, this poem is born in the old age of its poet, mother, at the same time as the death of the father who inspired it. And as we know, HD would die a year after it was published. This concurrence shows both the kingship of art to the process of natural creation and its separation from nature's ordinary time cycles. Wow. HD wrote this poem at the close of her career. She died the year the poem was completed, nearing the end of her life. She was perhaps better able to understand and accept the paradox of art. She knew that the artist is a creator. The word mother is her recurrent image. But she also knew that art is totally independent of the life that bears it. The self-sacrifice demanded of the poet might be too painful to choose if a choice were given. But her deepest perception is that there is no choice. To those born to be poets, writing is the only condition in which they can live at all.
I can relate to that.
Right? And it is through writing that she fulfills her role as mother, right? She finds the fulfillment of herself and as a woman, completes her cycle. It's such a beautiful ideal, and it's amazing, And it's really expanding this power of the creator into many different forms, in many different ways, It's beautiful. So we're going to get into the poem proper now, and I'm going to read the 3 parts that make up Hermetic Definition. There's a bunch of other poems in the collection, but it would be way too long to go through them. So I highly recommend, though, that everyone go check out this work. It's amazing. There's a poem about the owl of Athena that we won't get to. That's just like, wow. One of the things I wanted to show is the mother, the great mother, in her 3 forms that HD invokes. So the first form is as Cybele, right? The goddess of the mountain with the lions and the drum, in that relation of Attis, the Phrygian. Then, of course, we see Isis and Osiris, right? The great Egyptian mother who gives birth to that divine child. And then we have the mother of Christ, Notre Dame, right? Mary herself. It's beautiful. So we're going to start with Red Rose and a Beggar. And as we noted, the times are really important because they play into that whole birth. Red Rose and a Beggar. So before I dive in, did you have any comments or questions?
No, let's do it.
Okay, amazing. All right, so here we go. Why did you come to trouble my decline? I am old. I was old till you came. The reddest rose unfolds, which is ridiculous in this time, this place. Unseemly, impossible, even slightly scandalous. The reddest rose unfolds. Nobody can stop that. No imminent threat from the air, not even the weather. Blighting our summer fruit, the reddest rose unfolds. They got to take that into account. So as we know, the reddest rose is that act of pregnancy. What we're seeing here is that moment of inspiration where she sees that man, her muse, and is inspired. And that muse, that connection, that gaze has impregnated her with idea that is unfolding as a rose. And it seems absurd, right? Because she's an old woman. She shouldn't be inspired to create life, but here she is, right? Take me anywhere, anywhere. I walk into you, Doge, Venice. You are my whole estate. I would hide in your mind, the child hides in an attic. What would I find there? Religion or magic? Both, neither, one or the other, together matched, mated, exactly the same, equal in power, together yet separate. Your eyes, amber. So the Doge of Venice was the leader of Venice, the most powerful of the merchants, right? You are my whole estate. And also we'll see some more stuff with this Venice here. And this idea of them being matched together as equals in power. And what would I find, religion or magic? And I wanted to point out, right? She's before Crowley, you know? Or she's not really into that occult scene, but she's doing the same thing that Crowley does, where Crowley changes the spelling of magic to differentiate it from stage magic. So she's doing the same thing by spelling it with a J. She's talking about that higher magic that we're interested in, you know, spiritual, magical creation. Isis, Iris, fleur de lis. Bar Isis is son of Isis. Bar ou ber ou ben significant fille. So that is like significant brother, you know. So they're talking about Bar Isis is the son, right? Bar Isis is Par Isis, Paris. Anyway, because you do not drink our wine nor salt our salt, I would enter your senses. Through burnt resin and pine cones, smoldering in a flat dish. Were you a cave, hermit? Why do they punish us? Come out of the darkness. I will burnt to cinders in this heat. So much wildness here, right? Bar Isis is son of Isis, right? Paris. So she's connecting the goddesses to the cities she finds herself in. We already saw her mention Venice, Venus, right? And this, because you do not drink our wine nor salt our salt, I would enter your senses. This is a reference to several times where gods will come and they won't partake of the food. Through burnt resin and pine cones, smoldering in a flat dish. Burnt resin and pine cones. These are the Dionysian rites, smoldering in a flat dish. Were you a cave hermit? Were you the womb? You know, are you going and completing these Dionysic rites? Why do they punish out, come out of the darkness? Will I be burnt to cinders in this heat? She's trying to call him out of the womb, to give birth to him. Come out of that great blackness of the mother, right? Come into life, right? We're calling you forth. You're in your hermitage. She's trying to get that son of Isis to come out. They say the hieratic and the heraldic iris is the lotus, martigan, lily, magenta, purple. Do I blaspheme? She's connecting these to the purple and to the drugs, to those flowers, to the drug rites, right? Cowering under the rain, I think of the hot sand and call again. Bar Isis, Paris. I call Paris, not to the Greek, nor to the courtly suitor of Verona, where we lay our scene, though Verona is not far. Now I walk into you, Doge, Venice. You are my whole estate. Venice, Venus. This must be my stance. my station. Though you brushed aside my verse, I can't get away from it. I've tried to. True, it was fascinating. If you can stand its preciousness, you wrote of what I wrote. Why must I write? You would not care for this, but she draws the veil aside, unbidens my eyes, commands, write, write, or die. She's
Wow.
this act of possession by Venus, right? She is being embodied by that great mother. And it is that, she talks about the poet becoming the mother to give birth to art as, this is something that just happens to you. You have to do this. You need to be possessed, but it is also awful,
Write or die. So many artists go to their art as a way of sustaining themselves, right?
How do you deal with the absurdity and the craziness of life, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to create. This is my new prayer. I pray to you, Paris, bar Isis, to Osiris, or to Isis self, Egyptian flower, Notre Dame. Do you ever go there? The stones hold secrets. They tell us vibration was brought over by ancient alchemists. Our Lady keeps tryst. She commands with her scepter. Astrology is the first door, and the child champions us. Bid me not despair, child of the ancient hierarchy, and you today. So this is really deep, because she's talking about how in that Notre Dame cathedral they've kept the ancient mother goddess rites. She recognizes it. She sees the vibration in the stones. She sees the ancient alchemy and the astrology. And she wonders, is astrology the first door? Is it the first triumph, the gate we must pass into mystery? And then she wonders about the child, right? Osiris, the divine child to come, the dying and rising God who brings on the cycles, who will champion us. Bid me not to despair, child of the ancient hierarchy, and you today. So she's calling on that child so she can give birth to that child, right? Beautiful. Saint Anne is the last door. Maggie, Cybele, they once called her, the grand mother, the great mother. And where are we now? Certainly there is the rush, the fervor, the trampling of lush grass, the bare feet entanglement, the roar of the last desperate charge, the non-escape, the enchantment, the tremor, the earthquake. Nothing, nothing, nothing more, nothing further. The pine cone. We left smoldering in the flat dish, is flaming, is fire, no before, no after. Escape. Who can escape life fever, the darkness of the abyss? Lost, lost, lost. The last desperate non-escape, the reddest rose, the unalterable law. So what we're seeing here is her attempt to escape through the rites, right? The pine cone is representation of the pineal gland, By smoldering on the plate, she's saying that her mind has been turned to fire. It's that alchemical apotheosis that we see with the other people like Hercules. But what she's recognizing here is that her path is different. She's not ascending the mountain and going through that form of apotheosis and setting herself ablaze. No, she's giving birth to the divine child, Osiris Dionysus, right? So she leaves that flaming pineal gland, that pine cone, right? And she embraces the last desperate non-escape, the reddest rose, that birth, the unalterable law, the law of cycles, the one thing that cannot change itself. Wow. Is it you? Is it some thundering pack of steers, bulls? Is it one? Asking, is it that great masculine bull, right? That Dionysus again. Is it many voices from the past, from the future, so far, no further? Now total abasement. Were you ever here? Were you ever in this room? How did I endure your presence and afterwards just once, in a strange place, with others there? Silly talk mine. And you wouldn't drink our wine. Then fruit juice? Yes. And you wouldn't touch our salt. Almonds, pecans. What happened? You were so late. Why didn't you come sooner? Why did you come at all? Why did you come? To trouble my decline? I am old. I was old till you came. This inspiration that's causing her to become this mother. And she's kind of mad it's coming to her at this point in her old age when she's alone and tired, you know? And again, it's this thing of like, he's this ideal that's separate from the world. He doesn't eat of their food, you know? He's a dream almost, you know? It's wild. Why didn't you come sooner? That fool, that bull. I love it. Okay. The middle door is judgment, alchemy. Judge this. Judge me implacable. There is yet time to crawl back. To security, no. There is no time left. Almonds, pecans without salt. Scatter them near some sand. Coast. This is also a reference to the mysteries of the Great Mother. The almond tree is talking about the story of the goddess Aegisthus, who is born intersexed, and then the gods castrate her. And there's a symbolism where she bleeds, and then the blood transforms into the almond. And it's this loss of her masculinity that allows her to ascend and become Cybele. And then Attis goes through the same process, but he's that masculine who becomes feminine rather than the intersex. It's interesting, right? And, you know, this whole idea too, the middle door, and we're now getting the next door, and the middle door is judgment, right? And it's that having to be judged and face and be judged for our actions and what we've done in the world, you know?
Right.
For a windbreak beyond is the wax flower, the thyme, honey myrtle, and the coral heath. These are new to me, different, as you are new to me, different, but of an old, old sphere. There are some small wild dog roses, I think, but all this is nothing when the desert wind bears the white gum blossom eucalyptus fragrance. No, no, this is too much. We cannot escape to a new continent. The middle door is judgment. I am judged. Prisoner, the reddest rose unfolds. Can I endure this? She has been judged, and she has been given the burden of motherhood. You must give birth to this creation, right? That is her burden to bear and her judgment. Because you cannot drink our wine nor eat our salt, I asked, do you like salt? You said yes. I keep remembering my glass of red wine, one glass every day becomes an orgy. Greed devours me. Wine is the sacrament. Salt has not lost its savor. Savor? Savior? This is a new intensity, but you are far away. Not so far, Paris, hidden on or under a transept crossbar. The Notre Dame dedication is an enigmatic. Each of the 18 Latin words has a double sense. They tell us I find secundo. The seventh word means second, aid et favori. L'action de la nature. And this was inscribed in 1257. So before we hop to the next one, I wanted to point out here, all of this food talk, salt, the red wine that becomes the orgy, greed devours me. Wine is the sacrament. Salt has lost its savior. You need the savior to give birth to the savior. Who is that savior? Osiris reborn, the child to come, the one who promises a future, who can save us from the greed, who teaches us to make the wine, you know? And then this is wild when we're looking at, she's pointing out these, in Notre Dame, the dedication is enigmatic. I find secundo, the seventh word, means secundi, aid, and favori, right? The favorite is the second, the child, right? The son. The action of nature is to give birth to the child. The child is the middle way, right? The sun in our sky, Helios, is the sixth, the middle path, the way to follow. And Dionysus is the one who shows you the path, the middle way, right? By the light of the torch, which is the light of the sun. Wild. Going nowhere, Cybele, they write it, is set over the last door. So the final door you have to pass through is that door of the great mother herself. First is the astrology, then the alchemy, then the judgment, and now Cybele. Wow. It is heart. This no salt, they say, you might go at any moment. But that might be said of any of us. So I must stand apart, keep away, an intimate of my youth. A poet wrote, so slow the rose to open. So I contemplate these words and the Latin dedication and would decipher my own fate. I know the poet that I speak of wouldn't hesitate. Perhaps humility is more becoming in a woman. La rose et la fleur de cruest. And the cruest is the crucible that I called a flat dish when I wrote. The dish is that womb that gives birth, right? You mix everything up on that. Wow. I would enter your senses through burnt resins and pine cones. You become enthused with the God through the smell, through your senses, through that firing of the mind and imagination, right? The pine cones, which is that pineal gland. But I must finish what I have begun, the tall God standing where the race is run. Did the pine cones in the flat dish light an Olympic torch? My fervor was for one not born. When I wrote this, the red roses for bronze, roses were for an abstraction. Now, with like fervor, with fever, I offer them to a reality. The ecstasy comes through you, but goes on. The torch was lit from another before you, and another before that. The ever passing of this torch through the cycles that connects Prometheus to Dionysus, to Zagreus, to the divine child to come, and so on, in that ever expanding flow, right? And the Olympic torch, the torch of these games, right? We're engaged in the game. Life is a game to cause us to go through these gates, to have to pass these trials so that we can become a creator or a muse in our own right, the mother and the son, right?
Right.
So we leave the old bronze doors, 1257, for another bronze, 1960. I am thinking of the young athlete with the spear, the poised javelin, as I saw him in the picture, U.S. decathlon star. There is living bronze there, the vibration of sun, desperate endeavor, ambition, achievement, simplicity, sheer strength reaching sublimity, goodness that we might emulate. I might, at any rate. I like people. I want to do all I can to help them in whatever little way I can. We cannot compete, but perhaps we meet somewhere with my 7-string lyre. Seem helpless, effete, but where there is Olympia, Delphi is not far. Sublimation, recognition. The very aspect of the decathlon slays desperation as long ago today. Right? They're recognizing those games and the slaying of the python and those games as they move from Delphi, where the original oracle was, to Olympus. That shift from the matriarch to the patriarch, and she's trying to go back to that ancient tradition, to the long ago, to the origins, that prophetic voice, right? Helios slays the python. Right? And Helios is that Apollo. And he slays the great snake mother, right? The Delphi python, and replaces it with that patriarchal mode. Even though the priestesses, the prophetesses are still women, it has now become Apollonian. It's been transformed. It's no longer in that chthonic mode of Python, right? And Python is also related to the Egyptian god Wajet, who's that light, that snake, who gives the pharaohs their power, right? Who shows you the middle way again. It's that Promethean energy on full display still. So my red roses for bronze, 1930, bring me today a prophecy. So these lyrics that would only embarrass you, perhaps reach further into the future. If it took 30 years for my red roses for bronze to find the exact image, perhaps in 30 years, life's whole complexity will be annulled. When this reddest rose unfolds, I won't be here. Probably you won't either. In the meantime, there is beauty and valor, and these contests and passionate excitement as well. And who was I to shrug and pass them by? Perhaps it was my preciousness, as you called it, but that was long ago, last April. And last May, when you came so late in a strange place with others there. Right? So we're seeing here again the prophecy, the changing of this lyrics, this unfolding of time, you know, it's just beautiful. And this pursuit of the beauty, right? She's really showing you this contrast between that Olympian, that masculine that strives to ascend to brightness, you know, and that mother energy, the chthonic, which gives birth to the cycles, you know. It's like she's embodying Isis, and her lover, this dream man, is embodying Osiris, right? And they're lovers and they're mother and child at the same time. The poet of so slow is the rose to open writes, what have I done with my life? What have I done with mine? I stand again on the threshold. My left are the angels Astaroth, Lilith. On my right, Raphael, Michael, Astar, a star, Lily, a flower, Raphael, Michael. Why are you there? Would you guide me with dignity? Why is she saying that? Because you have Astarte, the goddess. You have Lily, the goddess, and then Raphael and Michael. Who are they? You know, into an unknown port. Would you champion my endeavor, Astaroth? You cannot be malign. With so beautiful a name, have you brought me here? Lilith, why do they call you a devil? With Lucifer and Asmodel, true, the noms démoniques or démoniques are dans tout réservé, right? So they use them too widely, these demonic names, you know? Why are they calling everything a devil? Why are they throwing these demon names on goddesses, you know, and on gods? Now we're going to get interesting. We have some serious mystery language all throughout here for those with ears to hear. First up, the sesame seed. You know, she was just talking about how the blossom of the rose is slow and it must unfold through the cycles. The sesame seed's blossom is different. It's closed until it opens in a blast of explosion and releases thousands of seeds. You know, it's like the exact opposite, but the same. You still have to wait for that moment. Sesame seed. String minute granules on a white thread or red. Will they split on my needle? Do I need a thimble? Sesame seed. From South Asia. That is far away. What comes between? Hemp seed. Fleur de chanvre. From India. That is the hashish superieur of dream. Is it better to string poppy seeds? They are too small. They worship the stars on the top of the towers. Dit tours à parfum. So these towers are perfume, you know? So she's talking about you need the flowers and the scents and the right drugs. She's listening to you, all of these mystical elements that'll help you enter into these states. And it's through the smell, right? The burning of them that transforms it. I need no rosary of sesame, only the days, the trial, reality, faint. Faint, O scent of roses in this room. The scent of roses is goddess Aphrodite herself often. When you see Aphrodite, she either is the scent of roses or the scent of female musk, we'll say. But, you know, it's like wildness. All right. Almost August and sacred host, so do I turn and fade, a candle in your light, burnt to the quick. You know I offered you my best, hours, minutes, days, years spent, to proffer a small grain of worship, incense, my last breath, I thought, to assemble in my song lines competent to praise, of shame no taint, no nom demoniacs. So again, saying we're not going to call people demons, invoked No fallen angel called by name. Now I am forced to hold my lines in doubt. Give me the answer. Let me know your grace. Whose is the judgment? There is one, indifferent to the realm of time and space. Azarel, ironic and subtle in his smile. Near and familiar in his face. Are his eyes amber? Is this your throw with death? Right, left, win, lose. You court the end. You call this life your rose so red. Is bondage stamp and seal? You asked, I am judged prisoner. You spoke of Asmodel. Your rose so red withers in any case. Renouncement, feu d'enfer. Do you know what that means? Flat d'enfer.
Let's find out.
Yes, well, ask Google Translate. I'm not the best with French. Sorry, guys.
I know a little bit of French, but it's not my forte, admittedly. But I Google here real quick.
Okay.
So enfer is the noun hell.
Fires of hell. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I did because usually when I think of hell, I think of Labat. Okay. Fires of hell. Holy shit. Now choose right, left, win, lose. Your rose so red withers in any case. Renouncement, fires of hell.
Wow.
Right, left, win, lose. You see what she's rejecting is these absolutes. You know, the hellfire, you know, all this stuff. Am I judged your prisoner? What about these cycles? You know, let's see where this is going. Azrael said, you spoke of Asmodel as if in reproval, and I am temporarily astray. I can't find Asmodel in dictionary or reference books, certainly not in the saints' calendar. Azrael is the Mohammedan angel of death, but we know that. Should we delete Asmodel and find another? Who is he anyway? Angels may become devils. Devils may become angels. He better stay. I must keep my identity, walk unfalteringly toward a lover, the hashish superior of dream. She's also recognizing the connection between dream magic and hashish, right? But also that cannabis can create that dream, right? Both of them are of the same color, of the same quality, and they lead you to that lover. I must keep my identity too, right? This theme of defining herself through her own means, through her own body, through her own ability, right? She doesn't want to get caught up into these other names and other things. She wants to see it in her own reality. This is why identifying the mother with Notre Dame is so important, because she's in France, you know? And that's a literal place she can go and see, you know? So even though these things are obscured, right? She's trying to see the truth behind the name, you know, and she's trying to see the truth behind her own name, right? I must keep my identity. Who is HD? Who is Asmodel? These things parallel. What is the Hermetic definition of this? Who are these beings really? Who am I really? You know? And that's the end of part one. What do you think of part one, Graham? Any thoughts?
Just interesting because you know, she's talking about Azrael, the angel of death, who separates souls from their bodies, right? And it's just interesting because she's talking about a union, like an identity of like a union of the myth with herself, connecting the artist to the person to the artist. It's like the opposite is kind of what I was seeing. So it's interesting that she invokes the Azrael image and then sort of like says, but no.
Right? Because she's rejecting these kind of like they sometimes the image has been so bastardized, right? It's like she can't see it anymore, right? Whereas within Lilith, there's still the lily. Within Venice, there's still Venus. And she's like, who even is Azrael, right? It's an Islamic invention that I'm even further removed from. So she's showing you this ability to try and identify and to see the true images behind these names, right?
Sort of like break the narratives and counter narratives that have been woven over history.
Exactly. It's about this idea of following the muse and trusting the muse and seeing the goddess in the world around you. I talk to people about this all the time because people act like the Great Mother died and like this whole tradition just up and disappeared. She's telling you right here they encoded the mystery into the building of the Notre Dame itself. Even though they are Christians, Cybele is still there.
She
Right?
says, feel the vibrations in the stones. It's like the animism, right?
Right? Where did they bring the stones from? And see it in the name. Par Isis, Venus, Venus, Osiris. It's all there. The goddess is there for those who have the ears to hear and the eyes to see.
You just have to look out your window and there's the Great Mother, right?
Right? The natural world, the grove, right?
Our homes are made of things that come from the earth. So like
everything is natural. This is something that blows my mind, is that we create this ridiculous dichotomy that separates us from the natural, where it's like everything is natural. There is nothing outside of nature. Anything that we create is utilizing nature. We're just playing with the tools that nature gave us. It's all natural. It's wild to think about.
Beautiful.
All right, let's continue with part 2. Okay. So you, this other, are the presence in the Aegina temple at the top of the hill. How could I have known this? I could not have known it sooner had I had to experience the roses, pourpre delicieux, and the rosaries, the roses rouge, before actually realizing. Sorry, my French is so bad, guys. The wild rose, precision, definition, image of divination. You are my own age, my own stars. I accepted a claim from the others for the honor unexpectedly thrust upon me. Some thousands were there, then the great hall was empty, though no one had moved away. And I might have fallen, but your hand reached out to me, and it was the grove of academy. This being accepted into that privilege, right? Being honored and being welcomed, being respected and being seen. It's kind of, the idea of the grove is that sacred space of the natural, pristine world where only people can be invited into, It's where that wildness is allowed to roam free. I read of initiations, adepts, neophytes, masters, and imperators, but this isn't it. No angels' names, no right or wrong, no intricate sentiers or paths. It's that you write. I love that. How do you do the magic? How do you go through the initiations? It's that you write. Even that I have written. What is miraculous? I don't know. It just happened. Because she was miraculous, right? She's one of the most celebrated playwrights of her age at this time, It wasn't that I was accepted by the state, the office, the assembly, but by you. It has taken some time to realize the implication, and much came between. And whatever happened is too simple to be written. If I had hidden as I wanted to, fearing a claim, I wouldn't have met you. I do not disregard the others, and there is nothing visionary nor static here, only recognition. Your mind's thought and range exceeds mine out of all proportion. And indeed, your words are esoteric and difficult enough sometimes, but exhausted by the whirlwind, the storm of your poem's dimension. I am the more stricken when as a gift proffered. You grant a moment's breathing, space, cette grâce, par instance, and a Delilah Blanc, that snow owl. Or dahlia, right? We all know the black dahlia, which is poison. Now we're seeing the white dahlia, the snow owl. Exhausted by the whirlwind. There's so much going on here in this section. Like overcoming the idea of being named, right? Breaking away from that is and recognizing that you are what you create. And it's the creation that's important. Right? And that's what's miraculous. And also recognizing here that all of this comes from her relation with the muse, this idealized lover, this Osiris Dionysus that she's chasing, right?
And this muse is almost like an audience at the same time, right? And it's like
Exactly.
her myth lives on in the memories of the thing she's creating.
Exactly. Well, when you create a poem, it exists outside of time. It is a completed work, and it is now timeless, right? It is an immortalization. So she's immortalizing herself through her art, and also now immortalizing her muse, this eternal lover, right? Giving birth to him, creating him. I did not cheat nor fake inspiration. What I wrote was right then. Auguries, hermetic definition. Yet I would have left initiates many times for a red rose and a beggar. But something sustained me. When you greeted me, I was paid fully for the long search in the meager lamp. There was no ecstasy, vision, trance, no years between, only an end to the whole adventure. It stops here. There is no striving for strange ships, Adamic delights. I have tasted the apple. My hand worn with endeavor, our curious preoccupation with stylus and pencil was reborn at your touch.
Wow.
This connection to this person in this moment of her acclaim where she's being celebrated and she meets this young man who touches her and recognizes her as this artist. And it is in that recognition that she, for the first time, feels the true touch of the muse, right? And then she feels reborn in this moment, reimagined. This is not a fake inspiration, right? This is a true, real human connection that puts everything else into, it's like also recognizing that the real muse, the real moments of inspiration are this simple, right? The mythologies are myth, right? They're poetry. But that which inspires myth is those simple moments of recognition. You are wonderful. Nice to meet you. Like,
I love that.
right? Isn't that interesting? No one has known her, has shown her as you. No other stood alone to slay the monster. There is one Perseus, unchallenged, an exile. No one strung snowflakes for a white rosary, nor invoked umbels. Virgin flower clusters for her, nor compelled her presence with the great Ave de Grace. If I can do nothing else, at least I can recognize this unfathomable, dauntless separation. This retreat from the world that yet holds the world, past, present, in the mind's closed recess. Suffice, where am I? The other side where you always were, with no cloudy ghost convoy, no magic, seigneur, but infinite mystery, wind, sand, rain, and snow. When she finds the muse, it is physical and real, right? There was no mystery or magic. It was that presence, right? It was that touch.
The other side you always were, that reminds me, I've said this before, but it just reminds me again of this line by Thief of that they're an electronic artist. They're just like, the light that you're searching for is the light that you're searching with. The power has always been within you. The magic is in you and around you. You just have to see it for what it is.
Yep. And this is what she's starting to recognize, that muse, this eternal lover, was always with her, inspiring her, guiding her, even though she's now only meeting him in this moment in the real, right? But we're going to see this takes on another color soon. Her white rosary with the owl, her confederate. And the owl, right? The white rosary, this is that image of Athena, right? The goddess who protects and brings democracy. It's beautiful. Is remembrance chiefly a matter of twig, leaf, grass, stone? That is as far as I see. But twig, grass, stone, a light slit of sand are part of Aegina, the island. And the island is herself, is her. Some say Hygeia is feeding a serpent from a cup. Hygeia is a goddess, one of the nymphs, of this beauty, and she is feeding a serpent from her cup. Isn't that a profound image? Small, intimate, not so august as the Athenian Parthenos. May Athene Hygeia be our near, personal patroness. Wow. So it is Athena, but Athena Hygeia. She's invoking this specific aspect of Athena in that form of Hygeia, right? What is Hygeia? I want to look. This sounds super familiar to me, but I'm blanking on this moment. Let's see. What is Hygeia?
Personification of health.
Right, the nymph of health. So this is Athena in her form of the healthy one. Wow.
Her name is the source of the word hygiene.
Beautiful. Personal patroness. I scrape a small pine cone from the sparse sea grass. Again, doing that hard work of enlightening your mind. The shows separate salt spikes and the dry sand drift. I need not turn my head to assure myself of the sea ledge. It is indented like a shell. I know this since I came here, before everything was over, before I realized an intimacy near as the air.
Wow.
I breathe the aloes, the acacia of your senses, tropic red spike trumpet flowers, indigo petal drift. More drug references. Acacia, you should know. Indigo, you should know. Of your remembrance, and in your promise de îles, which is promise of islands, there was perhaps no such place as this, which through antithesis may share superabundance. Your phosphorescent interplay of gold flecked or of rainbow fish. Another psychedelic reference. The rainbow fish is a fish in the Mediterranean that was used in the Phoenician rites, and it's said to have like DMT-like compounds. Draws me to the weedy inlet of my own promise, and a rock stalk as this, and only small crabs, and a crab net. Sea lavender, coriander. No, these are chamomile daisies. More drugs that I crush as I reach out. Arabian gum fragrance? No, that was the amber beads on the cherry bark and the sticky pine bark, the sassafras bark that we bit on, and some dusty butter and eggs. Wild snapdragon in a hot lane. These are not here, but I cherish my personal treasures now that I discover how different yours are. We meet in the antitheses. No need to speak, to heed one another. They're parallel opposites, right? She sees in him that Apollonian, right? He's that solar energy that's striving for this higher plane to ascend to the clouds, right? And she is that cyclical mother of the earth, right? They're antithesis to one another, but love at the same time. That's it. I can sit here on my rock throne, not moving. Wow, on her throne as that great mother. Or moving with everything like Cassiopeia on her star chair, moving round the pole. Now we're getting more images of the great mother as that ruler of the pole, the one who changes the stars. I know a lot of you will love that in the comments. Moving with the whole part of your giant concept of deserts, the earth entire, with water fronts, sea slopes, storm, wind, and thunder crash. I am perfectly subtle and silent. As I steal out, still lying here, and integrate with the fan weed, the bubble weed, and the strings and straggle of the long undersea grass. I do not compete with your vast concept. The prick of pine needles brings me back. Yet I am a part of it, as I am part of the spiked or smoothed or lacquered sea grass. Wow. This difference between the ocean and the tree, right? The masculine and the feminine, what we're seeing. But they're still both this magic, and she's embracing both of them. But oh, it goes further than that. Further than that, as I am swept away in the orgy of your poetry to tense terebinth. Terebinth? Terebinth. The hot. What is that? What is this word? Let's look this up.
Terebe. Let's see what it means.
How do you spell it? Oh, it's a plant. Okay. Cypress turpentine. Also called terebinth and the turpentine tree. Is it a psychedelic? It grows in the Mediterranean, Syria, Lebanon, and Palestine. Were regarded as a separate species to. Okay. Interesting. For you will be ashamed of the terebinths that you have taken in pleasure. Yes, it's a drug in Isaiah. That was Isaiah. So the Bible says, do not take this drug. It literally says Isaiah 1:29. For you will be ashamed of the terebinths that you have taken pleasure in.
It was a flower plant belonging to the cashew family, apparently.
Interesting.
Maybe that's a different terebinthus that I'm looking at. But wild, though. Wild.
Right? And you draw me out to compete with your frenzy. There are other roses, l'odeur solennelle de roses, though the five-petaled rose sauvage, pentagram of the alchemists. So she's talking about these different people who try to invoke through different means, right? She is invoking the Dionysus and giving birth to Dionysus through the act of poetry. And now she's contrasting that with the pentagram of the alchemists, you know?
Wow.
Sustains me and the laurel or the olive of our grove of academy. Yet your words free me. I am alive in your recognition. Athena stands guardian, and there is ecstasy and healing. And her acceptance of, oh, okay, that's poetis, which is that's Greek for poet. Fantasy, wow. Her serpent feeding from a cup. I'm getting better at Greek than French.
I was gonna say, that's impressive.
Oh, it's because I like that word. So, oh, lady, an effable favor. You sent him here, or did he glide down? Oh, of his own will and endeavor, I touch his head and his throat, where your hands have fondled him. My hands rung along his proud length, filled with milk from your cup and honey from your rocks. Surely he speaks to me, tout parfumé, your malice. It is you he incorporates, and his speech is the poet's speech. Je rêvais de sel les bouchées morts de cire. Something about my mouth of the dead?
I think, yeah. Muzzle, or I think le bouche morte du désert. So the deathly mouth of desire.
Wow. Amazing. You were born in a palm swamp. How did you get here? They say Apaphia is the goddess of the Aegina temple. They tell us that Apaphia, god or goddess, was akin to the Cretan Artemis. Cretan Artemis? They must mean the snake goddess. Now we're getting back to Medea, right? And we're getting to that iffy Medea, that image of the priestess holding the snakes with her breasts revealing. In Athens, Athena conquers the serpent, coiled at her heel. Here he is intimate, I think. Her familiar, like the owl. She is nearer Egypt, and the asp or the uraeus. Okay, wow. The asp and the uraeus, that's Wajet, that's Python, who Apollo Helios slays, right? Headdress of initiates here in my head. You are speaking words, indicted on parchment, not always easy to decipher, but pertinent to us here today. So she's recognizing that she hears the words from the muse, but she also reads these words like the sacred mists in the mysteries, you know, as well as to les sabres au limite du monde, the sand, what? The limiting sand of the world? What do you think? Les sables aux limites du monde.
I'm trying to find the line here.
It's the last line.
Yeah. Les sables aux limites du monde. Hmm.
Well,
Hmm.
Sable is sand,
And Mond.
is world.
Yeah.
You give us authentic prayer. Ouvre ma bouche dans la lumière. Open my mouth and let the light in.
Oh.
Wow. Yeah, what is this? Sables aux limites du monde. We'll look that up before we move on here.
I'm looking it up here. Da, 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 da. Well, limits is like limits, right?
Yeah, it's the limiting sand of the world.
Mm-hmm.
All right, limiting sand of the world.
Interesting.
Wow, interesting for sure. That Chronos, right? What I'm thinking now is that Chronos energy of the sands of time stuck in the hourglass. Oof. But here I don't know what you mean. Does anyone? What are you? Laws de transhumance et derivation. Are we translated, transubstantiated, derived from tree and fish? Rest under my branches. This is a beautiful line, derived from tree and fish. Because the
Mm-hmm.
mother goddess is usually the fish, right? She's usually Aphrodite, the foam, or Aquarius, right? And then you're seeing the tree, right? Which is that Dionysus. Wow. Believe me, I would be your hybrid très rare de rosière romance Himalayan. I will be your ultra rare rosebush, Himalayan rosebush. I will be your ultra rare Himalayan rosebush.
Huh.
Or your hybrid rare rosebush, Himalayan rosebush. You would not recognize me, as all fretful traces of humanity vanished from under my thorn and leaf. You know, that's a theme too, turning people into plants, right? Hyacinthus, anyone? You would be wept away into your own chartered sky. No one else knows the way. You would meet the Gorgon, the monster again, slay and accept fate. Que ce monde est insane. The world's insane. This world is insane. That's so amazing. You slay the monster again and accept your fate. But by slaying the monster, you're killing that goddess. Look, lost, lost, lost. What is exile but a gift bestowal, the goddess's recompense? She recognizes the Gorgon as that goddess. That's so beautiful.
Wow.
But it can't be. It can't be. It is you who are très rare and far, as one with time, the star cycle, and at one with time in the star cycle, right? He's talking about him as that ion, phonies, right? By antitheses, I become ant or eel. Nothingness slides off this rock, growing in perceptiveness. I become small snake, not quite invisible, inhuman, transhumance. I am conscious of my exquisite spine, God's work as I slip and swing. No bird could be swifter in air, nor gull, hawk, or lark could be happier. Go, Perseus, man and hero. Your perfection permits this. It is your gift, my mind's opposite. Leaving it all, leaving the Ile de Promesse, I float, swim, and dart now, straight to the antithetical center. She's going to Ionic life, the antithetical center, following the middle way, moving between the poles, right? Beautiful.
I love it.
Amazing. You will understand, perhaps one or two others will understand, no one else. The aim, the pursuit. Is he dead in the darkness? Of this other, of whom your transhumans brought miracle, miracle out of magic, right? You need to know the other. This is a thing we see constantly. This is why it's that male muse, you know? She's seeing herself as the absolute other, right? Where she is this motherly force who gives birth to art. This man in her life is that transcendent, deified other who ascends the mountain, you know? different paths, different ways, right? His eyes amber your deviation, your derivation. Whatever you meant by that transformed my self-seeking. Quest to content. I could rest anyhow. I need not quibble over why or where, or why did he come at all, or why didn't he come sooner? Now a snake in the wood, now a snake in the shallows, now green, blue, and vermilion vanish in the deep water. I am only movement and color. But God, give me back my 1,000 exquisite jointed bones, my spine's rapture, your work. I would go further. She's upset that the muse, this snake, revealed himself to her so late in life, you know? Where do I go? I know the way, but my step is uncertain. If I gain humanity again, I cannot cling indecently to your aloes, your palm trees, or can I? Is physical weakness indecent? It seems so when I think of Bar Isis, that Memnon in the desert. Were his words ironical? You look well, he said, and those were his last words when I saw him in a strange place, with others there. He would write, he said, and he did, and I answered and waited for another letter, but apparently it was over. He was not quite 40. I was over 70. So I read you again. I would recall your Ishtar, ball or another, and let humanity go, arrogant, imprudent. I won't stop. I won't look under me. The unfathomable belongs to you, sand dune, heap and mound, continent, empire. I passed winged fish and stark meteors of fish shoals. I need never speak. I am as unimportant to them there as I was in the upper hair. Aegina begot me. Yes, you and the grove are there, but ultimately I must track down this Asmodel. Paris, Bar Isis. I must creep into his cavern, beat my hand on his breast, wake his heart to this instant. Wow. So I want to go back here, right? And recognize, because this is a duality here. We're talking about her, this muse that she's searching for, this Osiris godman, and then we're seeing him physically embodied in a person, right? A person who met her in the physical when they were 40 and she was 70, you know? But it's also this recognition that even as, like, they wrote to each other, you know, but he didn't respond back. And she's wondering, like, is it because I'm weird? You know, why didn't he write back? But at the same time, there's this understanding that she's still on this path, even as that energy has left. So she saw it and it disappeared. She must still seek after it, even though that relationship is over, right? She sees it, him not responding to her letters, as an ending. But her quest for that Osiris is far from over, from that Bar Isis, you know? I say, I don't know what he thinks. I say, I don't care, but that isn't true either. But what was it? Quite fair of fate? But was it quite fair of fate to accost me with amber, Egyptian eyes, amber, in an ordinary man's face? The muses always have the eyes of gold. They have the eyes of Helios, right? It's that sign of that Helios lineage. I can't stop and wonder, inventing a problematical reaction. What might he think? Say, answer to my Notre Dame revelation, the astrology, alchemy, magie. The three doors, one can't hurl such findings in the face of a stranger, right? These are her three doors where she had to face her judgment, right?
Right.
How it was over. I stopped waiting for a letter, and into the veil rent. As through parted curtains was the exact intellectual component, or the exact emotional opposite. Your cool laurel, the olive silver green, to compensate or offset the reddest rose, which she was creating, right? This enigmatic encounter.
Wow.
How wonderful to strike my breast and cry, I have sinned, but you, Seigneur, won't permit this. Darting straight like fire, I remember your ball, your Ishtar, my bones remember. Where am I going? You named Memnon. He sang, did he, in the sun? The first sun ray, swift, swift. Be swift to come, the first of a million, of the million sun's rays. One must strike first. Let me be that one. Now there is one note. Out of the sea, over the sand, a symbol, obelisk. No man, Memnon, Bar Isis, son of dawn. Might as well say Ammon and Lucifer and Satan. And Helios. Mais Dieu, cite-t-il dans le quantième? What do you mean? What do you mean, Seigneur? Is there an inch in the square or a million miles? It's equivalent in the outer sphere where God keeps quiet. But I am not God. This is a nervous invective. I haven't got there to your quantième, which I read quatrième, but I don't understand anyway. What are these words? Quatrième.
Quatrième is date, and quatrième is fourth, like the fourth.
Oh, wow. To your fourth, which I read as date, but I don't understand anyway. That's interesting. You know, the four is that cycle of Earth. You know,
Yeah.
4 is the cube, right? And the 3 is that feminine, is the triangle. It's interesting. Continue. Seigneur, it is no good. Your perfection carried me along, but it's gone. Not your incomparable challenge to time. Your sequence of invocations, your magnificent rhymes. You showed me how I could cling to a Greek rock and how I could slide away. But did you show me how I could come back to ordinary time sequence? Neither insect, reptile, nor illimitable sun ray. I want my old habit. I want to light candles, Seigneur. You must forgive my deflection. I cannot step over the horizon. I must wait today, tomorrow, or to the day after for the answer. Wow.
The answer only comes when the time is right? That's when the door opens.
When the door opens, that's the message, right? Open sesame, it's when the door is ready. It won't open before. And now we get to the final poem, Star of Day, part 3. Wow. And she wrote this really near her death, you know?
Oh, wow. Because she died in September of 1961, I believe.
Yeah, I thought it was a year, but I would guess I was wrong. It's a few months. Wow. Crazy. Yeah. And this is her magnum opus, right? This was her final work and her complete synthesis of her character and her self-definition, right? Her Hermetic definition.
Ideas coalesce into this new identity.
Exactly. This final identity, her final form.
Exactly.
The great mother, the artist realized, right? The one who gives birth to creation. So at last I find Asmodel, the second of the genies zodiaco. So geniuses of the zodiac, to whom one may cry, excusez ma incantation, excuse my incantation, my prayers. Raise up, lift up, receive my recognition. And this at last with no reservation. Right, left, win, lose, for you are dead. They say Sais brought forth the star of day at midnight when the shadows are most dense, the nights longest and most desperate. It was Plutarch who spoke of Sais. We know the rest. Isis, Cybele, Attis, Notre Dame. Was Sais a capital of Upper Egypt on the Delta? I don't know. At any rate, Sais, what have you done? What has the word done? You include, but in the small grandeur, the whole circle of the sun. You know, and Sais is a really interesting city because it was such a powerful place. At one point, pharaohs ruled from there. It was the seat of the goddess Neith. You know, really interesting that she invokes that imagery. I'm not sure what Plutarch said. I'll have to look this up. He must have said something about Sais. All right. So it was in the winter, it was in the depths of night, just as my Christmas candles had burnt out, that you were born into a new cycle, one of the zodiac angels, one of the countless others, yet remaining yourself integrated with the star of day, night here. I am fearful and timid, taking a stumbling way toward you, failing in fortitude, turning back to the incantation I wrote. I need no rosary of sesame, only the day's trial, reality, remembering. How then I was waiting for a letter that never came. I wrote the rosary in September. You were on the way. It was 6 months since that first meeting, and a little over 9 months to the day. Late winter. It was very dark, just as my Christmas candles had burnt out. That you were born. You had died, they said, integrated with the star of day.
This thing about the candles burning out and being snuffed out just makes me think of Nirvana.
Right?
Even though it's maybe that's not what she's invoking because there's a rebirth, but it just stuck in my head.
Well, that is what Nirvana means, right? To extinguish the light, to blow out, right? So it's that imagery is somewhat there. What I'm really seeing here, though, is this idea that when he died, he was reborn in the art. It's that apotheosis, right? Right? Like as we see with Heracles, when Heracles is put upon the pyre and set ablaze, he ascends to the stars and becomes Zeus, right? Even though he dies on the earth, he becomes integrated with the star, and this is what we're seeing here is that this lover of hers, Asmodel, this mysterious Persei, he dies on Christmas, and it was this, and she's witnessing this death and experiencing this death in her home alone through this ritual imagery, and at the same time she's going through this ritual rite. She's apotheosizing him. As that candle blows out, he is ascending the star through her creation, right? She is giving birth to him anew, right? In this image of the art, and now he will forever live on as this art piece that she has given birth to.
Very Artovian.
Right? Very magical. It was April that we met, and once in May, I did not realize my state of mind, my condition, you might say, until August when I wrote The Reddest Rose Unfolds. Giving birth, right? I did not realize that separation was the only solution. If I were to resolve this curious condition, you were 5 months on the way. I did not realize how intimate the relation, nor what lay ahead. I did know that I must keep faith with something. I called it writing. Write or die. The rose, the fire, the flame must be maintained. But how? It was Venice, Venus, Isis. Generateur, generant, never to be gainsaid. Who ordered, ordained, or controlled this and compelled my stylus pen or pencil? As I wrote, I walk into you, Doge, Venice. I did not think of it the other way, that it was you who walked into me. The experience was unprecedented, a fire eating me up, but a fire to be sustained anyhow. Now it was too late to reject fate. You were nearer than you ever were. You are my whole estate. I love this because it's like, I did not think of it the other way, that it was you who walked into me. Because often we see it the other way. The muses are usually women, the feminine beauty, right? That object that we go to pursue in lust. But here, she's creating the muse and giving it new life through love. And it is a man. It's that mirror image. It's the same muse, but in a new way. And I just find it interesting that she only ever saw it through this way, right? Because she is that woman, that feminine character, that mother energy, right? And for us, this seems not the usual. It's just interesting. I love it. I love it so much. Then I turned to another formal and external who had found the way. It was necessary to keep contact with intellect and achievement to balance the last desperate non-escape with transhumanance and derivation, to be swept into a whirlwind to far îles de promesse, islands of promise, not mine but another's. But I must return to my own nun gray. I didn't know why. I must recover the human equation until I turned over these pages and read, I want to light candles. True, Christmas was on the way, and the angel Azrael, not of death, but of birth. Right.
Wow.
I said, Azrael said, you spoke of Asmodel as if in reproval. No wonder. His hand was on our shoulder. I was in the way. I was no partner to that fellowship. I had had my day, but I didn't know that. I didn't know you had fallen into a trap. The reddest rose. Renoncement, feu d'enfer, right? Fires of hell.
Good d'enfer. Yeah.
It was September, 3 months to go, but I didn't know that anyway. It was too late to cast you out.
Mhm.
Rain falls or snow, I don't know. Only I must stumble along, grope along, find my way. But believe me, I have much to sustain me, though for the moment dim with ination. Dim with ination, I don't conjure you. Name your name. I don't try to, but at least I found Asmodel, the second in the zodiac circle. And I can, if I want to, pray. Excuse mon incantation, ma prayer, right? Excuse my incantation in my prayer. But what do I pray? Let him forget. Let him forget the past. Let him wander with the shade or substance of the one he loved best on earth. No, I don't pray that. What do I pray really? Separate us now eternally. Let severance be complete. The cord is cut. No, I have 9 months to remember. Right?
Mm.
This idea, truth, they're coming together in that physical embrace, right, as one being. But she must cut that umbilical cord and let him go as his own creation too, right? There's a recognition that this unity is non and eternal. You know, I have 9 months to remember.
That word you were thinking of, inanition, it's like exhaustion caused by lack of nourishment.
Oh wow, okay, interesting. Only an end to the whole adventure. It stops here. I wrote an academy, but it had to go on the full time. An emotional seizure, ecstasy, fantasy, insanity, no matter. It brought me back to the room where we had first talked together. It was informal and friendly. Only when I had no letter, I felt cast out. I was thrown away and to recover identity. I wrote furiously. I was in fever. You were lost, just as I had found you. But I went on. I had to go on. The writing was the unborn, the conception.
Wow.
Now you are born and it's all over. Will you leave me alone? Whether you have gone to archangels and lovers or to infernal adventures, I don't know. I only know this room contains me. It is enough for me. There is always an end. Now I draw my nun gray about me and know adequately the reddest rose, the unalterable law. Night brings the day.
Wow.
There you go. Hermetic definition.
What an incredible work.
So interesting, is it not? It's one of those books that I read very late for HD. I had read a lot of her other stuff, and but this work, and the first time I read it, I didn't understand it. You know, it's just such a deep poem, or poems, I should say. But what I really love about it is this idea that it's really the feminine perspective on the muse, and seeing this Osiris Dionysus as that ideal eternal lover, right? As the feminine muse, right? It's the same relationship we're seeing. Like, it's almost parallel to me when I'm looking at it. Like, when the mythology, we have that love relationship of Attis and Cybele, and now we're seeing her, it's reversed. Now it's like Cybele giving birth to Attis. It's beautiful. I loved it. I feel like HD is one of the most incredible, magician poets that I've ever come across, and really shows you the magical aspect of poetry and how poetry can create myth and connect you to those divinities to draw down that muse and bring you into connection, you know?
Yeah, it's beautiful. And again, the mythologizing of the self, creating your own myth that persists beyond your death, right?
Right? This is her hyper sigil, you know? And this is also her becoming and fulfilling that mother role, right? Which was a very big struggle for HD because she had so much trouble with men and was in love with a woman for most of her life, you know? And then also you're being in an art, like raising a child was not the literal fate for her, even though she wanted to. What became her, she wound up giving birth to children metaphorically through her art, you know, or literally in her mind, right? And I also love that, like you said, she defined herself. She gave birth to herself as that artist mother, as that divine creatrix. HD is the self, is that hermetic definition. She defined the self through her own terms, her own mythos, through her own lens, right? And she pursued that muse to do so, that eternal lover, right? That Dionysus Osiris. So beautiful.
Love it.
Absolutely. Amazing. Any final words you want to say on HD and hermetic definition for
I
our
think
audience?
I think a lot's been said already, but just again, I've said it before, but the message here is create your own myth, take your life and find the magical in it and to let that flow for it.
Right. You know, and someone made a comment. She said she birthed the son and then he died. Yeah. She birthed the son and then he died. And you know what's also sad is that she birthed the son and then she died, but lives on in her work as well. They both died, but live on in that experience.
A true apotheosis.
So we don't know who this lover truly was. We don't know anything about him. All we know really is that they had these two encounters. One encounter, which was a deeply passionate mental connection. Another encounter in which there was an exchange and a promise of an exchange of letters. And then the ending of that. The exchange never continued, you know? So other than that, we don't know who this man was. She calls him Percy. She calls him Osiris, so it's interesting. In my mind, he is the muse, right? He is the muse from the feminine aspect, right? The female muse.
Just like there's succubi and incubi, the male and the female muse.
Exactly, right? And you see this a lot when you read. Like, more people need to dig into Dionysus as a figure. There's a real amazing book by Carl Karenny on Dionysus, and it really identifies him as this ideal masculine to the feminine, right? Like when you look at Dionysus, he is a feminine god, even though he is a man. He's always giving to women, he's dancing with women, he accompanies them in their revelry and in the orgies. He's the bringer of pleasure and of madness and of joy, and he brings and changes the cycles, he causes the fertility, right? So there's this whole aspect of that energy, that Osiris Dionysus energy, as this muse, but we never talk about it in that way. We reserve this muse to this feminine form, right? We reserve it to this goddess of inspiration and as something to be pursued from the male gaze, But there's so much more to it, right? There are many gazes. There's, and now we're seeing it from this gaze of this poetic feminine, and it's beautiful, right?
I love it. I love it.
So, Graham, as we wind down, I know you've been busy creating art. What do you want to promote? What do you want to talk about to our audience?
Always busy. Sauceley's Infection, my prog metal band. We're working slowly on some new music yet again. And just a couple of days ago, I released an industrial demo with a project I'm a part of now called Imperial Dirge. And both of those are in my link tree. That's about it for now. Just working on music.
But it's amazing, and all your links are found right on your link tree. You can get access to your demo and to the new isosceles.
Yep, just look under music on the link tree and it's there.
Amazing. And you guys are working on a full length for the industrial project. What's the band called again?
Imperial Dirge.
Imperial Dirge. Pretty badass, I must say. And then your graphic novel is well on its way. When is that set to be released?
Its way. It's I just have to I finished redrawing a scene that I wanted to work on, and now it's just transferring it all to digital. But it's over 300 pages, so that'll take a couple months, and then it'll be out in January.
Beautiful. So everyone, make sure you subscribe to Graham. Check him out on the link tree. Look at his publication house, Things in My Chest. You can buy all of his poetry books. You can find his music. And of course, you can find his upcoming release of the graphic novel, which is like 10 years in the making. So I'm pumped for this. So. All right, everyone. Well, this has been Searching for Dragons. Graham, you're coming back next week with a new episode. And we're going to go back to Unica Zern. What are we talking about with Zern next week?
Yes. So I thought it would be important to give her a little bit more attention. And I have a work called The House of Illnesses by her. And I have a rare edition with a facsimile of, or a reproduction of her original manuscript, which has crazy drawings. And it has the drawings as well as like paired with text, so it has translations of the text inside the drawings, and it's a crazy dreamlike narrative full of strange magic, and I think people are gonna love it. It's like it was all written while she had jaundice.
Wow.
It's a wild work. I don't want to spoil too much about it, but it's gonna get crazy.
If you guys saw our last Unica stream, you know how intense she is. She is a surrealist of the highest order, and you will be made frightened. And what's really cool about this work that I thought was amazing was that this is an incredibly rare book, and you managed to get your hands on it. So this is something that a lot of people would never have access to. So this is going to be a really fun stream.
The text is available in a collection, but not the drawings. So this will be the proper reunion of these two elements of the work.
Love it. So excited for that. So make sure you guys come out next week when we talk more Unica Zern. And what was the book called again?
The House of Illnesses.
The House of Illnesses. Thank you, everyone, once again for tuning in for Searching for Dragons. I'm Snappy. Thank you so much. Take care. Last words, Graham?
Find the magic in your life.
Beautiful. All right, everyone. Peace.
Master could be, and I pressed my eye eagerly to the grave, and I wondered who his master could be, and I pressed my eye eagerly to the grave, and I wondered who his master could be, and I pressed my eye. And I pressed my eye eagerly to the grate. And I wondered who his master could be. And I pressed my eye eagerly to the grate. And I wondered who his master could be. And I pressed my eye eagerly to the grate. And I wondered